Good afternoon, everyone. Um, Welcome to our session this afternoon. We'll wait just a few seconds to allow people to trickle in, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. All right, well, it's already 2:02, so let's take advantage of time. Welcome. We're thrilled to have each one of you with us today. My name is Daniel Pasco Aguilar. I am founding director of the Center for Social Justice and Chief Diversity Officer at Excelsior University. Excelsior's leadership, the Center for Social Justice, and the Civic Engagement Rope Team welcome you to this afternoon's keynote on intercultural communication. Today's event is part of a democratic engagement dialogue series with our fourth monthly conversation scheduled for tomorrow, May 29 at 2 p.m., including the participation of today's keynote speaker. We're really excited about that. We hope you can join us tomorrow as well. For those of you who are not acquainted with Excelsior's rope teams, we have developed a collection of communities we call rope teams, which we describe as representation and support villages around our students and community members based on what matters to you. If you want to learn more about our rope teams or how to engage with them, you can visit them at communities.excelsior.edu, or you can contact the Center for Social Justice for more information. We have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Milton Bennett, co-founder and director of the Intercultural Development Research Institute, creator of the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity embedded in our JEDI framework, and an amazing colleague and friend. He's joining us this evening for you, Dr. Bennett, an afternoon for us, all the way from Milan, Italy, where he is faculty member of the Department of Sociology at the University of Milano-Bicocca in Italy. So good evening, Dr. Bennett. We're honored to have you. And before we introduce you formally, though, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. David Scable, president of Excelsior University, Erin Koffel, Chief Communications Officer, and Dr. Mary Berkery, Excelsior's Department Chair for Liberal Arts and Director of Strong Start. The three of them have kindly offered to say a few words about intercultural communication and democratic engagement before we start. David?
Thanks, Dan. Excuse me. Thank you, Daniel. And welcome to the second keynote of our Democratic Engagement Dialogue series, where we've been exploring the value of intercultural communication and fostering understanding, empathy, participation, and collaboration among diverse people, communities, and organizations. As we gather today, we're reminded of the importance of effective communication in bridging cultural divides and promoting social cohesion. As Dr. Bennett notes, intercultural communication is not just about exchanging information, it's about building relationships, fostering trust, and creating a sense of community. In today's globalized and polarized world, intercultural communication is more crucial than ever. With increasing diversity in our communities, workplaces, and educational institutions, our ability to communicate effectively across cultures and perspectives is essential for building strong relationships, resolving conflicts, and driving innovation. As Dr. Bennett emphasizes, cultural diversity isn't just a reality, it's an opportunity for growth, creativity, and innovation. The value of intercultural communication extends beyond individual relationships to communities and organizations. Research has shown that diverse teams are more innovative, productive, and better equipped to navigate complex problems. A study by McKinsey found that companies with diverse workforces are more likely to outperform their less diverse peers. As former McKinsey managing partner Vivian Hunt noted in the study, diversity isn't just about checking boxes, it's about harnessing the power of diverse perspectives to drive innovation and growth. So welcome, Dr. Bennett. We're delighted you're here. And Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, David, and welcome, Dr. Bennett. Effective intercultural communication is critical for promoting social cohesion and addressing social injustices. By understanding and appreciating cultural differences, we can build trust, foster empathy, and create a sense of community. To again quote Dr. Bennett, intercultural communication is not just a skill, it's a mindset. It requires a willingness to listen, learn, and adapt to different cultural perspectives. Dr. Bennett's work on the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity provides a framework for understanding the stages of intercultural development, from denial and polarization to minimization, acceptance, and adaptation. At Excelsior University, his model is embedded in our JEDI framework, helping us individually and collectively to approach each other, assuming the same level of complexity in each other's perspectives and experiences as the complexity that we see in ourselves. Dr. Bennett's recent focus on intercultural communication highlights the importance of empathy, active listening, and cultural humility in building effective relationships across cultures. As we continue to engage in our Democratic Engagement Dialogue series, we aim to foster a deeper understanding of intercultural communication and its value in promoting social cohesion, creativity, problem solving, and innovation. Through Dr. Bennett's keynote address and subsequent discussions, we will continue to explore strategies for developing intercultural competence, building diverse and inclusive communities, and harnessing the power of diverse perspectives to drive positive change. I'm pleased to share this moment with Mary Berkery from our College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Mary?
Thanks, Erin. So as David noted, in today's increasingly interconnected and polarized world, intercultural communication is not just valuable, it's essential. At Excelsior, we believe in preparing students for success in their work and in their lives, and that means equipping them with the ability to communicate, collaborate, and lead across cultural boundaries. That's why intercultural communication is woven throughout the university-wide curriculum. Starting from the very highest level, our university learning outcomes, or ULOs, emphasize key competencies such as written and oral communication, evaluation from multiple viewpoints, engaging diverse perspectives, teamwork, civic and cultural sensitivity, collaboration on civic issues, and empathy. These aren't just theoretical concepts or idealized goals, they're mapped across every program, ensuring that students encounter the skills repeatedly throughout their academic journey. When we zoom in more closely on individual courses, we see how these competencies come to life. For example, in our Cornerstone course, which is the first course for all undergraduate students explore topics such as inclusion, awareness of difference, stereotyping, and implicit bias. They then engage in frameworks like Dr. Bennett's own developmental model of intercultural sensitivity and the LERA method, applying these concepts to their own experiences through a reflective discussion. These concepts are further reinforced as students progress into their programs. For example, in the School of Technology, students apply intercultural awareness and social responsibility skills to real-world ethical dilemmas at the intersection of technology and society, which is, as we all know, a swiftly evolving landscape. Of course, we recognize that this work is and always will be ongoing. As the world changes, so must our curriculum. These efforts reflect Excelsior's broader mission to cultivate graduates who are not only career ready, but also culturally aware, empathetic, and equipped to contribute meaningfully to their communities. And thank you very much, Dr. Bennett. Welcome, and back to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, David. Thank you, Erin. Before I introduce Dr. Bennett, I want to thank a few people and units who made today's event possible, starting with Maria and Courtney from marketing, Erin, Stacy, Jason, and Connor from communications, Mary and Ben from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, our President David, Jill and Lori from the President's Office, and Pam from the Center for Social Justice. Thank you so much for your amazing partnership and support. Also, toward the end of our session, we will have time for questions, sharing, and dialogue. So as you think of questions and comments, please include them throughout the session in our Q&A space. After the keynote, we will either read them to Dr. Bennett for him to address them, or you could also request to be elevated to ask your question visibly and verbally. We're looking forward to our insight and to our dialogue. So thank you. And now I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Bennett. Dr. Milton Bennett is an adjunct professor of intercultural communication in the Department of Sociology at the University of Milano-Bicocca, Italy. He is also the co-founder and director of the Intercultural Development Research Institute, which is co-located in Washington State, USA in Portland, and Milan, Italy. He is known for originating the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity, which is embedded in our JEDI framework, and which also serves as the theoretical foundation of the intercultural development inventory, which we're engaging right now. Dr. Bennett has consulted with hundreds of universities, companies, and communities throughout the world on topics of international and domestic intercultural relations. Currently, Dr. Bennett is co-editing with Edward Dunbar a Springer publication series on the new authoritarianism, for which he's also authoring chapters on the suppression of consciousness by authoritarian cults and an evolutionary epistemology of authoritarianism. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Bennett. We're honored. The floor is yours.
Do you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I think this is a little bit better. I'm in a bit of an echoey room here. So let me use this. It just occurred to me that I was doing that. Thank you very much for that. That's a great introduction. I liked that movement from Dr. Shewell to the practical value, basically, of diversity through the idea that you need to have a mindset from Dr. Koffel, and then into the educational responsibility for doing that from Dr. Berkery. That was a great sequence, yeah. And as you know, I like these kind of sequences. I think one thing builds on the other. And that was a very nice example of that. They say that as you get older, you start losing sight of the trees, but the forest comes into view, and that's certainly been the case with me. So I want to make this presentation a bit, a bit of a 10,000 foot view of what I see happening, where things have been, where they're going. And leave the details to the much more energetic and certainly very competent people, such as the ones who were just speaking. It's about intercultural, but it's about the consciousness that we need to have to support these beautiful examples, these beautiful outcomes of empathy, humility, group coordination, deriving the value of diversity in corporate situations, making multicultural societies work. I would sum that up basically as saying we inevitably are moving into multicultural societies, despite what might be the occasional pauses that have been brought to bear on that. But the movement is inevitable, I believe. And the question really is, how do we deal with that? This is a heretofore unknown condition amongst us human beings, to be living so closely within contexts of otherness, where the goal is not to make the other like us, but for the other to continue being the other in a way that brings the kind of value that we just heard people talking about. So I'd like to speak about that consciousness, and to do so by referring historically to some other revolutions of consciousness, and look forward to what I see as being the impending revolution of consciousness that is just around the corner, a corner that we can't quite see around yet, but I'd say the corner is at least in view. I'll do this by showing you some slides, because I think it's a little more interesting than just watching my head here, but I'll try to go quickly through that, and then we'll come back to the Q&A where I'll turn the slides off and have some two-dimensional human communication here. So to that end, I will... It's possible that this will work. Let me see. So do you see are you seeing, maybe somebody can tell me if you're seeing this, the presenter view?
It seems to be loading at this point.
So you're not seeing anything?
Correct.
All right, let me come back a little bit here. You know, we always think that these things, okay, let me get out of that. We always think when we try these things out at the beginning, they work fine, don't they? You know?
We just tested it, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there are too many, I have too many options here, so. Yeah.
There we go. We see the presenter's view.
We see the presenter's view. So that means that I will shift. Let's see, I think that there's a somewhere.
If you click on slideshow at the top, right next to animations there on the PowerPoint side, and then play from start.
There we go.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. So here's a quote from one of my favorite authors right now, Carlo Rovelli. He's a quantum physicist, but he writes in a way that's very accessible to anybody about the new way that physics is thinking about matter and sort of reality, and how that might be influencing the way that we in our everyday lives might be thinking. One of his nice statements is the future's rushing towards us as a cloud of possibilities, and what they become depends on how we relate to them. That the future is not a thing that's coming towards us, it's just a set of possibilities. And how we relate to things now is what it is that will, as they say, collapse those possibilities into actualities. Therefore, my advice to you is that we should not be thinking of ourselves as choosing a path that will take us into the future, but rather to act in a way now consciously that creates the future that we want to live in. And to me, I find this very optimistic. It means that the future is not a set thing. The future is something that we're constantly creating, and it's a collective creation. It's not just us doing it individually, but neither does it exclude us in our individual actions. So I would hope that we can take to heart the idea that everything that we do has a potential impact and has an impact on the construction of the future that we're moving into. To build on that a little bit, I'd like to pick up some lessons from the past. There are two major turning points in the human evolution of consciousness. And by evolution of consciousness, I mean the ways in which we human beings, through language largely, have generated our own evolutionary direction, where other species are more dependent on heredity. We human beings are pretty good at generating social conditions that in turn essentially act like evolution of our species. The two that I want to talk about are the cognitive revolution, which is the move into using language in abstract ways, and the consciousness revolution, which is using that idea of abstract language to talk about ourselves, to create a self, basically, and in so doing to generate one of the biggest changes that has occurred in any species, as far as we know, which is self-awareness. And then finally, what I think is the impending evolution of consciousness, which I call meta-consciousness, along with some commercial outfits, as we all know. But the meta-consciousness that I'm talking about anyway is developing another level on self, where we see ourselves as constructing ourselves. And I think that that's a very powerful layering, as you apparently would say, of consciousness, in a way that gives us a lot of latitude for the choices we make about the future. to begin with this cognitive revolution. This is from Harari's work on Sapiens, who points out that 70 to 30,000 years ago, there was this revolution where human beings that were just doing fine coordinating themselves in relatively small groups figured out how to create a condition where they could coordinate larger groups. And it's the coordination of larger groups, you know, the ability to hunt and coordinate hunts, the ability eventually to plant crops and engage in agriculture, that all of these large-scale cooperations gave human beings, gave Homo sapiens an advantage over other human groups, even including Neanderthals that were dominant at the time that this first started happening. This ability of humans to use language metaphorically, to refer to itself, was the key to our being able to speak not only descriptively of, oh, here's there, look at the rock, look at the tree, look at the stream, but to speak metaphorically about the spirit of the stream, the gods who were controlling behavior, the ideals and values that might exist in some universal way. That all of these were, in fact, metaphorical realities coming out of our experience, but language that was used to create metaphors from our experience. And here, Lakoff and Johnson's work on metaphors we live by is sort of a very basic statement of how that works. So we lived and we continue to live in this dual reality. On the one hand, our actual experience, and on the other hand, our imagined experience, which is every bit as real as our actual experience. Sometimes I have students who say to me, well, if it's imagined, then it must not be real. And I say, well, imagine this line here. And they say, yeah. And I say, is it real? And they say, no, we just imagined it. So I say, well, if you cross that line, I'm going to shoot you. You know, is it real or not? You know, and they go, well, and I say, yeah, the world is filled with these kinds of lines. You know, they don't exist anywhere. Borders of countries, lines of enmity between groups of people. And yet we use those to shoot each other. Nothing more real than that. It's just like being bitten by a poisonous snake. So we live in two kinds of reality, you know, the concrete reality and the abstract reality of our own creation. The lessons that we can take from this, I think, are, first of all, that the metaphor is a powerful thing, that it's through this kind of metaphor that groups were able to coordinate themselves in these large groups. They were able to create the commonality of a common belief, sometimes a religious belief, but could be a belief in other kinds of philosophies or ideas. And that in turn allowed them to generate collective motivation so they could coordinate themselves towards a common end. The problem that that's left us with is the problem of reification. The reification is where we confuse the metaphoric language with the tangible language. So we think that the things that we talk about metaphorically, like values, are things, but in fact, they're not. You know, we don't have values. When values is a metaphor for how we assign goodness to things, how we assign preferences, basically, for wanting things to be one way or another way. You know, and we say we have values, but in fact, it's a metaphor for how we exercise preference. So we probably need to be de-reifying these metaphoric concepts to enable our moving beyond the idea that you have your values and I have my values, thus generating a clash of values that may in fact be not coordinatable, into a process that we can coordinate into some kind of mutual adaptation. And I'll be talking about how we can move in that direction. Let me pause and say, was that working okay? All right, just checking in. So what we're seeing now is the first of the revolutions. It's a major revolution. It's what makes us human, really, is our ability to use language in a metaphorical way that generates all of the experience that we have that's outside of our basic physical experience that assumedly all organisms have. All right, so I'm going to go back to this, maybe. Do we see it happening? Yay. Oh, man. I do this often enough. I'm going to get good at it. All right. So the consciousness revolution now, and this is it. This is the next thing that's probably more important in many ways than what we just saw. The consciousness revolution is one in which we moved from being able to use language to refer to things metaphorically to using language to create the very idea of self, to create the observer of those things that we are metaphorically talking about. This is here I'll make reference to Julian Jaynes, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. He says behaving and communicating, including languaging, do not demand self-consciousness. Yeah, really. And, you know, think of bees and birds, and I mean, there are lots of organisms that have rudimentary language. It's not abstract language as far as we know, but it's language that can refer to things. So we can do that. We can use language, and then we can even refer metaphorically to things with language without self-consciousness. Indeed, our ancestors thrived for most of human history without it. But language through metaphor is able to create new circumstances when necessary. So let's talk about what those circumstances might be. According to Jaynes, between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, so that would be 2 to 1,000 BC, we started seeing an increase in human population. So this is a population timeline that moves exponentially up to today. But you can see that this period of time, BC, was a time where groups, because of the very success that they had using metaphoric language, were starting to come into contact with one another. Before this time, human groups didn't come into that much contact with other human groups. And when they did, it really wasn't a very good thing. But at this point, the circumstance changed, and we started being thrown into contact with more difference than we had dealt with before. It's an important idea. And this new situation was one in which we were able to generate self-consciousness. Self-consciousness is the use of language to refer to oneself, both as an object, as an actor. And Jaynes's very interesting hypothesis is that we didn't really think of ourselves as having selves. We were just doing what we were doing. We were hearing what he calls the voices of the gods that were telling us how to coordinate ourselves, but we ourselves didn't see ourselves as actors or as agents in that process. The development of self-consciousness allowed us to develop other consciousness. So if you're self-conscious, you tend to attribute self-consciousness to other human beings. And so this is the basis for the theory of mind, according to him. And I think it's a good analysis that our theory of mind is that other people probably are kind of like us and that they have internal lives. But people didn't always think that, and we have plenty of evidence that people used to think that other people were not human like they were. For instance, the word for many primitive groups is the people, and the grammar may refer to people inside the group differently than it refers to organisms outside the group that are in fact referred to like other animals, other elements of the environment. This explains a lot about how people used to treat each other, which is we would now call inhumanely, but technically that would be true because they were not seen as human, and therefore they were being treated in ways that we would currently call inhumane. To put this into a little visual picture, here's our group of human beings that are using metaphoric language to coordinate themselves, and again using Jane's language that sort of in general we're hearing the voices of the gods, and what he means by that is that we have a common metaphor that we follow, and that may not literally be voices of the gods, although in some cases it actually might take that form. When we come into contact with others, the initial tendency would be to eliminate the other group as a potential threat. And so you have in the Old Testament of the Bible, for instance, lots of situations where God is telling people to smite other groups and smite them all and wipe them out and so forth. But it's not exclusive to the Bible. There are all kinds of traditions include the destruction, basically, of other groups of people. James is suggesting that as the groups of people that we ran into became more numerous, this became a less and less viable way for us to interact with other people. And in the process of doing this, the importance of the metaphoric gods in our lives was reduced. The voices became whispers, if you will. And that in its stead, we generated the metaphor of me and the analog of me, which is I. So suddenly there was a self that was acting in the world, and there was an I, which could essentially make choices about what we were going to do. That this in turn generated theory of mind, or the idea of otherness. And what we use that for, and I know today it doesn't look like this is happening, but it really is a lot relative to the past. It generated mutual adaptation. It allowed us to interact with other groups in ways that didn't involve just killing them or being killed by them. And we, in fact, have become quite successful, despite, as I said, the current clear exceptions to that, but that in general, we've been quite successful as a species in learning how to mutually adapt with other groups. The lessons from this revolution are that we become aware of others, of otherness, that we have to coordinate across groups to achieve viable results, which is an important lesson that we still are learning, of course, as we just heard in the introductions, that intergroup coordination is not instinctual in the same way that language acquisition is, and therefore it needs to be taught. So the role of education in many ways is to encourage self-consciousness. And because it's the key to our being able to coordinate beyond our own group. We can coordinate within our group essentially without this self-consciousness, but we need self-consciousness to generate the theory of mind, which in turn generates human otherness, which in turn gives us the basis for coordinating with other groups. And we now find ourselves in the position of needing to do that a lot, relatively speaking. Scientific thinking and critical analysis tends to be based on this, which is why learning science is a good idea, because it's basically an enactment of self-awareness, where the self is the observer. It's important, however, for us to realize that this is a relatively recent thing, that self-consciousness, it's only 3,000, 4,000 years old, let's say. We've been around for 200,000 years as a species. So this is a pretty new thing. And I'd like to suggest that makes it fragile. It's easy to lose this. Here's Julian Jaynes, who says, the mind is still haunted with its old unconscious ways. It broods on lost authorities. And the yearning, the deep and hollowing yearning for divine volition and service is with us still. And by divine volition and service, he doesn't mean normal religion. What he means is the suppression of consciousness and the giving over of self completely to some external power. That yearning that we bring with us allows us to rather easily be dehumanized, and in the process to dehumanize others. Here again is the picture where we see people in this state of mutual adaptation, but somebody comes along and you can put your own picture in here. Here's a picture that I chose because probably most of you would agree with it. Here are a couple of guys who basically are saying, leave the thinking to me, give over your agency to me. But those are only two of a number of people, some of whom are quite familiar to you from everyday news, that are basically doing this. They're saying, stop exercising agency and just do what I say. And this, of course, is the basis of authoritarianism, the book that you heard Daniel say that I was a co-editor of a series on. That when this authoritarianism begins to be exercised, again, since it's an old form, we see a loss of agency, the loss of the I. The metaphor then goes away. The metaphor of me goes away. That makes the theory of mind go away. When the theory of mind goes away, it's then easy to dehumanize others as they have been in the past, where they were not defined as equally human to ourselves. And then it's okay to kill them. In other words, it's a devolution of consciousness, a regression, basically, to a more primitive condition, which was the normal condition for us, certainly many thousands of years ago. This condition, unfortunately, is occurring within, however, a state of mutual dependency, which means that when we kill them, we pretty much are killing ourselves. So it's a pretty serious and potentially suicidal condition given our current state that we live in. So I'd like to suggest that this impending meta-consciousness revolution, the movement now that will essentially protect us from that, or will make it less likely for us to regress to that primitive condition, is the move from self-consciousness to so-called self-reflexive consciousness. This means that we not only are self-conscious, but that we see ourselves as generating the self. We become aware of the way in which we are generating the self of self-consciousness. And this is the basis of agency. Agency is the meta level of self-consciousness, or self-reflexive consciousness, where we recognize our own creation of self and others, and thus we attain the freedom of self-definition and the responsibility for defining others. It's a kind of a responsibility that we must take then for ourselves, and then that applies to others. This agency, according to Ravelli, increases information by favoring one probable state over the other. And his suggestion is that physics, anyway, is moving in the direction of defining reality in general in terms of that. So if we apply it to the work we do as interculturalists, what we're doing is we're taking responsibility for the generating of boundaries. We're saying, here's us and everybody else is them. And oh, by the way, them can be divided up into that group and that group there. So those could be 3 nations or 3 ethnic groups or 3 generations or something. And then we could generate groups that cut across those groups, like ethnic groups that cut across national groups, or generations that cut across ethnic groups. We can talk about super groups like the European Union or the United States, for that matter, that pulls together a lot of other diversity corporations, for instance, that pull together different functions. Or we can talk about subfunctions, gender differences or other kinds of differences within any of these groups. The issue here is that these boundaries are imaginary and they are real. They're both imaginary because we are constructing them through metaphoric language, and they are real because they can get you killed. And the process here is you affiliate with these groups, and you are ascribed to these groups. And sometimes those match. You feel like you're part of that group, and other people say, yeah, you are part of that group. Sometimes they don't match. You feel like you're a part of a group, but other people don't allow you to be part of that group, or vice versa. More often, they ascribe you to a group that you don't affiliate with, group of terrorists. You say, I don't feel like I'm a part of a terrorist, but that you're being ascribed to that group, etc. So it's by taking responsibility for the construction of these distinctions that don't make the distinctions go away. It just means that we now have the agency to be able to correct misapplications of these kinds of things, to de-reify basically these conditions. This then means that when we talk about culture, We need to talk about culture as a process, not a thing. We don't have culture. We do culture. Culture is the coordination of groups. It's not a thing that we have. And so the way we do that, this is Berger and Luckman's famous social construction of reality. We have cultural institutions, pronounced culture, it's like going out and doing something cultural tonight. And we have cultural worldview, which is our experience of living in those institutions. We're socialized into a group of institutions. All of us are socialized, no wolf children. And we in turn enact the roles, as we are right now, of an institution such as education. And that allows us to coordinate attention within the group, the coordination of meaning and action amongst people interacting within some boundary that we have created is what generates culture. By recognizing that this is a process, not a thing, it gives us a chance to be able to enter into that process and to do what's called meta coordination. So going back to the way Dr. Scheppel initially talked about the need for this for managing this diversity, that's basically what we're doing here, is we are coordinating systems. That's why it's a meta coordination. Coordinating systems are essentially cultures, and we are faced with a demand that we human beings have never faced before, which is how do we coordinate the coordinating systems without destroying them, without making them like us or just killing them? How do we coordinate that? How do we make it work? And we've been working on this for some time. I'm optimistic that we will be able, with this new kind of meta consciousness, to do it better than we have done. This generates an ethical issue too, which I thought I'd leave you with. The search for truth obscures what ought to be the foundation of ethical choice: an understanding and respect for the views you disagree with, accompanied by a conscious commitment to the choice you make in the face of those viable alternatives. In other words, we need to respect people that we disagree with, but that doesn't mean we can't be committed. In fact, that if we fail to be committed, we fail to be generating, to make our contribution to reality, and we leave it to the other people who think they have the truth to be generating reality, and we just sit by as spectators to that. So we need to be committed, but we need to do so in a way that recognizes that things could be different ways. That way we don't fall into killing each other. So there's another guy I like a lot, Umberto Montoyana, and I won't read this whole thing, but basically he says, everything that we say or think has consequences because explanations are part of our life. The way we explain things is part of our experience in reality. So be careful how you explain things, because that explanation becomes reality. It becomes part of your experience. And this says a lot about conspiracy theories and other things that, in fact, we see are becoming parts of people's experience in ways that are frequently not very healthy. So the future is not determined by the present, nor is it determined by the past. The future, along with the rest of the world, is probabilistic, and it is rushing towards us as a cloud of possibilities that will become actualities depending on how we relate to them. So I stop at that point, and it's pretty philosophical treatment of this, but I think it's insufficient for us to just say, here's how to do it, without saying, here is the kind of consciousness that we need to bring to make those competencies, to make those skills work in the current situation.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. Wow, you gave us a lot to think about, and I can see some questions coming in already. So the first, I think, is going to open up a lot of conversation and dialogue. So we'll start with you, Dr. Bennett, in a response, but others on the call, please feel free to add in, and also we can capture some other feedback in the chat as well. It's about AI, something we hadn't really touched on today, but how do you feel? Is the integration of AI into the curriculum a de-evolution? Does it homogenize cultural difference? And if so, how do we avoid that to retain human agency?
Well, I don't think I don't think it's a bad thing, actually. I think that AI is like a giant Wikipedia. It's a great way of summarizing human, sort of Cliff's notes of human development. And nobody knows what Cliff's notes are anywhere, but they used to be the old Wikipedia, kind of thing that you'd look up when you didn't really know something. You'd look up Cliff's notes. And there's no reason for AI to be a threat, because AI is intelligent, but not conscious in the way that we're talking about consciousness. That when we talk about consciousness as self-referential organizations of agency, the AI is not an agent. The AI is intelligent in the sense that it knows a lot, and it can put things together according to probabilities in ways that are very powerful, but not terribly different than the way human beings can do that. But we educators know, that there's a difference between being just a scholar and being a good thinker. A scholar is somebody who knows a lot, but not somebody who necessarily generates creative new directions or pathways or innovates or does other kinds of things that we as human beings depend on for our own evolution. And I think that will continue to be a demand on human beings, that we would be unwise to give over to AI any more than we should be giving over the control of human destiny to scholars alone.
That's an interesting perspective, and I wasn't really sure where you would come down on that question. Anyone from the Excelsior side want to add in?
I have a question, and first let me thank you, Dr. Bennett, for sharing your very powerful insights. I follow your work for a long time, and it's been quite a guide, right, to a number of the ways in which I've seen the work that we need to do as individuals, as organizations, and as communities and society. One area that has been really impacting to me is the concept that you have explored for many years about, and you mentioned it here, the goal is not to make the other like us, but to let them be who they are, combined with our responsibility to be committed. And I love that you brought Yuval Noah Harari's work as an example, and particularly *Sapiens*, which really struck me when Harari focuses on the cultural constructs that we develop and under which we live, which are not real. And he gives 3 examples in his book. Money is one, nation is another one, and religion, I think, is another one. In terms of saying these are things that we have created, and they're really impacting our lives, right? How much money I have feels very real, even though the money construct is something we have created and it really doesn't exist, right? You might have a piece of paper or a number in an account, but it really doesn't exist. And it marks so many differences.
But somebody will kill you for it.
Yeah, exactly. So my
get
question,
more real than that.
Actually, absolutely. Let alone nation, right? And defending the nation and that type of thing. But it feels to me that our work is to figure out how to responsibly develop another construct that we create, which is culture, which is you talked about, but in a way that is functional both socially and organizationally. How do we do that, right? It's the more I engage in conversations and attempts to help build culture that allows us to grow, be functional, to be effective, efficient, to be inclusive, right? It's a daunting endeavor for everyone. How do you recommend that we combine that focus on allowing others to be themselves at the same time that we remain committed to the extent that we can develop cultures that allow us to survive and thrive rather than destroy ourselves?
Well, first of all, let's use the principle that culture is not a thing, it's a process. And so when we think about building culture, we're not trying to build the thing. We're trying to generate a process, which then eventually we might refer to as culture metaphorically. But in fact, what we're trying to do is to generate some kind of a process. What would that process be? And if the outcome that we want is to live more successfully in a multicultural society, then we know that there are certain qualities that human beings have, such as a strong sense of self-awareness, a good sense of otherness, where they have this well-developed theory of mind. And so one of the things that we as educators want to do is to say, what can we be doing with individuals to help them develop a better sense of self-awareness and a better sense of complex otherness? And what then can we do how can we make institutions supportive of that? So we're not trying to create a multicultural culture. We're trying to support individuals in their self-awareness and in their awareness of otherness, and generate the institutions that will in turn be supportive of those competencies in individuals. And that then generates the conditions for socialization into those sets of institutions that in turn then generate an ongoing culture that we might call a more pluralistic culture. We will not get a pluralistic culture by going into the past and saying, who's to blame for why we haven't done this before? That's not going to help us, It never did. It's never going to. What's going to help us is to look forward to what we need to be doing to build that society. Everything that we should be doing should be, is this supportive of that outcome or not? Or does this contribute to the polarization, to the very polarization, which seems to be impeding us from doing that in the first place? And we're not going to get out of polarization with counterpolarization. But we can't just sit by and say, oh, well, nothing to be done, as I think you're implying. What we need to be able to say is, what skills do we need to have? What competencies do we need to have to live in a multicultural society? How do we support those competencies? And I think that from what I'm hearing you all say, you're doing a pretty good job of that. You have, maybe nobody says this anymore, but it sounds like you have your eye on the ball. And that ball's going out there, the ball's not back there, it's going out there.
And an interesting, well, let me first pause. Erin, do we have other questions? We have a question in the Q&A space, I see.
We do. I was going to open up to Mary Berkery first.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bennett. I am a historian by training, and I see a couple other historians in our participant list. And so I'm so glad that you mentioned that we're not destined to repeat the past, right? I think that's the kind of oversimplification that we hear sometimes, that history repeats itself. Sometimes it rhymes. That's the old adage, right? Sometimes there are lessons that we can learn from the past, but it's not a direct one-to-one ratio. But the question that I had is about, you mentioned an impending evolution of consciousness and what might be coming around the corner in the future at the same time as we're talking about authoritarianism. So how can, the past and the approaches that we've had toward authoritarianism and the way that those have failed and the way that we think about how past human societies have addressed authoritarianism, how can that inform our approach to it today, and especially as educators, how we're teaching about authoritarianism and about students taking agency for themselves?
Wow. Yeah, we're putting together 5 volumes on exactly that question. So I'm afraid that I don't want to give you a facile answer to that, but it certainly is the question. I mean, the question is, we have not dealt well. I mean, it's just a century ago, we saw the outcome of authoritarian regimes that, have a tendency to devolve into into violence, into mass violence. And many people, not just survivors of the Holocaust, were saying, never again, never again. And yet here we are. And I don't think that we are here because of the inevitability, as I agree with you. I don't think that history inevitably repeats. I think what happens is we don't know what to do to adapt to the changing conditions. So we go back to something that wasn't particularly viable before, but we forgot that, we as a species don't have really good memories, and so we go, oh, well, if democracy is not working very well, let's get some strong person in here to make things work on personal whim rather than inefficient, long processes of negotiation. Maybe that'll fix things. Well, probably not. And I think that the way that we protect ourselves from that is not by going back and saying we need to learn those lessons more carefully from the past. Because they were pretty clearly stated. There's a huge literature on authoritarianism from the 20th century, and it was insufficient, basically, when we look at societies that have high education levels who appear to be experimenting again with this form of governance. I think instead, my analysis is that we have failed to generate the alternative. We have failed to see forward into where we need to be going to be viable in the current conditions. And because we failed to come up with a good forward alternative, we've left people with nowhere to look but the past, nowhere to look except to things that didn't work before. So our job, to me, is not so much to correct those people, not to try to learn the old lesson better, but to create new tools, new ways of being viable in conditions that we've never experienced before. Looking forward.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. I know we are just about at time here, and it feels like we could continue to talk for a while. But to me, that is no better way than to encourage folks to join the dialogue session tomorrow, where you will be attending as well. So as we wrap up, I will leave it to you, Daniel. Any closing remarks?
Yes, I'd like to read a quote that you mentioned, Dr. Bennett. Our challenge is not choosing the path that leads us into the future, but to act now to consciously create the future we want to live in. And this last answer to Mary's question, I thought was both the question and the answer were very powerful in that how are we consciously, intentionally constructing alternatives, right? The new tools you mentioned for us to function in a better way based on the past that we know, but allowing everyone to develop that self-consciousness you're talking about.
Yeah.
I cannot thank you enough for being with us today and for your kind and generous offer to be with us tomorrow as well. To me, this is that conversation that we need to be having, and with a very important set of outcomes that we need. So thank you so much for your leadership, for your research, and for being with us today. I don't know, Erin and Mary, whether you have any additional thoughts before we close.
Mary?
No parting words. I'm excited for the conversation tomorrow. Thank you, Dr. Bennett.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Bennett.
And we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, see you
tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Hope, yeah, please. And I do look forward to that conversation. I think that'll be a nice way for us to continue. All right, bye.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bennett.
Oh,
and
yeah.
thank you, Erin.
I hope
was a wonderful hour. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, yeah, it's, you know, pretty abstract, but, you know, I meant what I said at the beginning, which is if we don't get ourselves straight about how we're approaching these skills, you know, because I've been doing this for several decades. And, you know, we've been teaching these skills. We've been teaching empathy and, you know, adaptation and all of these things. And we really have very good techniques for teaching this stuff. And we have, you know, intercultural workshops that I've done hundreds of, you know, and that have, you know, very predictable outcomes of people who are able in that group to generate these competencies, these pluralistic competencies. And it hasn't mattered enough. It hasn't. And we can make all kinds of excuses. We can say, well, we didn't have a critical mass, or, well, we didn't have enough institutional support, or this or that. You know, I mean, I suppose all of that's true to an extent. But what I'm left with is we haven't had the consciousness to support it. That we've been using the wrong paradigm. You know, in other work that I've done, you probably know, I think that we got stuck in relativism. And we became so relativistic that we weren't able to commit to anything. And by not committing, we weren't able to generate this kind of positive action that creates the future. And what we've done is to leave it to the people who thought they had the truth to create the future. And that's been that's a dangerous thing. That's where this authoritarianism comes from, or, you know, of various forms, totalitarianism of one form or another, is from people who think they have the truth. And we who tend to believe that truth is constructed haven't made the next step, which is to make the commitment to doing that, as opposed to
delegating.
As opposed to saying, you know, well, we should be respectful of other people. Yeah, we should, but that means we shouldn't. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be constructing the reality as we think it should be constructed. So anyway, I hope we can continue that tomorrow.
I could keep going here, but I want to be respectful of your time, Dr. Bennett, and leave some conversation for tomorrow too. This has been
it's time to go home for dinner. You know, 9 o'clock, people eat dinner at 9 o'clock in Italy. So, you know, it's I'm not late for dinner.
Oh, an Italian dinner. How would I give for that?
I was just thinking that, Daniel.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. We'll see you tomorrow. And thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Bye.